I remember a time where the idea of a game lasting less than each dollar per hour I paid for it would have made me upset. A time where if a game didn't meet a minimum threshold of 10 hours, I would consider it like a scam. Angry Joe style.
4 hours!
Now there were always a few exceptions here and there, but overall, game length was in itself a metric by which I would judge the gaming value of a title. Boy, have I changed. Or have I? Today I'm going to tell you how and why I've come to enjoy games that have fewer hours of gameplay. But before I dive in, please don't forget to subscribe, like, and turn the notification button on if you like my content. I'm just starting this channel and each of those makes a huge difference for me. I'm also doing this now full-time and it is my only source of revenue. I'm what a video game marketer would call a hardcore gamer. I buy and or play more than 10 titles per year. Some years, way more. Over time, my gaming backlog has grown and grown and grown to the point where I simply had to remove games from my list even though I bought them. And because of this, I almost never play games on release anymore. The thing is, I have a sharp memory of the time where this wasn't at all the case. Actually, where it was the complete opposite. I would eagerly be looking at release dates of upcoming titles because I had nothing relevant for me to play and was getting bored. I remember this specifically during the release of Mass Effect 2 in 2010. Being an avid RPG fan, I had already played Dragon Age Origins, The Witcher, and Mass Effect 2, all three 2 times over. And I remember very clearly, after my last run, having to search for a game to play, which sounds completely nuts to me today. Like, I would go on Steam, on Google, and do research. Like, type top 10 RPGs to play in 2010, or top 10 strategy games, and so on, and see what games I could play, since I had none waiting. With that in mind, I think it's also easier to understand why a gamer like me, a student with limited resources, would value the total number of hours he could get out of a game. A game where I could clock in 50, 80, 100 hours was a good game, a dev's job well done, the bang for my buck. But somewhere down the line things changed, or I changed, going from too few games to too many, from playing games for 50 hours to playing them for 200 hours. And these days, before I start a new game, believe it or not, I like to research the average time necessary to complete it, on websites like howlongtobeat.com. Now, when I learned that a game I want to play is less than 30 hours, I actually feel a huge sense of relief. Like, really. In fact, it makes me want to play that game even more. So for example, in my backlog at some point I had games like Plague: A Tale of Innocence and Hellblade: Senua's Sacrifice, in which I clocked in 12 and 7 hours respectively. And you know what? These were great games, especially Plague, which I loved. And I didn't feel the need for them to be longer, while totally enjoying myself and being happy about their price tag. Although, to be honest, I probably bought them on sale since I don't play games on release anymore. Now, this feeling is not true for every game. I have some grail games from beloved franchises for whom I would be pissed if they were 12 hours. I mean, imagining Red Dead Redemption 3 or The Witcher 4 having less than 50 hours of gaming time would probably make me upset. But I think you get my overall point. A game being short is no longer a negative thing for me, and on the contrary is often a plus. So I guess the question is, what changed? Is it me? Did I just grow older and my taste evolved? Or maybe it's not me at all. Maybe it's something about the gaming industry itself. It's a bit of both, I guess. Let me start with the reasons that are, I believe, due to my own evolution. Getting older and having less time. Obviously, a difference with 2010 is that I was a student back then, with a lot of time on my hands. Today, with a job, the amount of time left for gaming is reduced. Also, as I grow old and discover more and more games, I inevitably get attached to more and more franchises, impatiently looking to play the next installment in the series of a beloved game. That thickens the backlog for sure. But this can't be a reason in itself. First of all, I was a pretty serious student and worked and studied hard at various points in time, meaning gaming all day, every day wasn't the norm, and my time was still constrained. Secondly, Even as I'm no longer a student, I'm not living with someone, which has always left me quite some time to play, with games being high on my priority list of occupations. And that's not counting episodes like COVID or months being jobless, where I could game 8 hours per day easily if I wanted to. What I mean is, in the end, the available time gap with 2010 is there, but it's not as significant as one might think. Being a completionist. Yep, this definitely doesn't help. It's rare that I play a game that I'm not sure I'm going to enjoy. These games waiting for me on my list are almost all games I consider must-plays. And it's very rare that I don't finish them and try, for example, to do all the side quests in an RPG. Even when I realize it's turning into a slog mid-game. I had that with Pillars of Eternity, the first one. I could have stopped it midway and called it a day, but my completionist side prevented me from doing so. Because once I started it this way, I felt compelled to finish it the same way. Now, I'm not really a 100% achievements kind of guy. Actually, I don't really care about achievements, and my completionism is more of a homage to a franchise or a game I truly enjoy and with whom I feel the need, both as duty and desire, to experience absolutely all the content possible within it. That's how where some might have put 70 to 100 hours in The Witcher 3 Full Edition, I will have poured in more than 300 hours. I actually played the game with a spreadsheet open of all the missable content in the game. I'm not joking. I'll put the link to that spreadsheet if you're interested. So yeah, that doesn't help with clearing the backlog. Now, over time, I've learned to curb my completionist side and accept to go through some games faster than others. For example, using a story difficulty setting, or simply accepting to rush the main campaign on a game I deem to possibly be a B in my own internal scoring system. So the impact of this side of me is again less prevailing as it may seem. Playing online multiplayer games. So I'm also a guy that sometimes play online multiplayer games like MMOs and competitive FPS. Now, these are more episodic, meaning I will play them intensely for a couple of months here and there. But it's not something I do on a regular basis. During that time, I generally won't play solo games. I can't do both at the same time. I'm pretty competitive, and so I'll sink the time required in these games to reach a level I'm satisfied with. And typically, they are kind of designed so that they don't have an ending, and to keep you playing over time. So yeah, that mobilizes my gaming time, which would otherwise be available to finish and play other games. But I was already playing these kind of games back in 2010, so again, I wouldn't overestimate the impact of this either. So I think the explanation can't be found only on my side. Something also happened in the industry overall. There are more and more games available to play. Compared to my reference point, which was the year 2000s, there is no question that the gaming industry has grown massively since. I found this interesting quote in an article from the Washington Post where someone aged 40 said, "I can't really remember a stretch in my life where there's just been so many games always coming out. I probably had 10 games total for the entire duration of Super Nintendo. Now, at any given moment, I have 3 times that." This increase in market size is largely driven by the mobile gaming space, but also the rise of subscription-based services like Xbox Pass. It happens together with a massive increase in cost and budget of AAA titles, crushing AA studios in the process, which have almost disappeared from the gaming landscape. Meanwhile, a huge inflation of indie devs took place, both due to the evolution of technology with lower entry barriers, as well as the bigger market in which a very select few can find a niche. As a result, there has been a soaring rise of available games to play. Simply put, there are a ton more games releasing each day and month today compared to 2009 when I was anxiously searching for a new game to play once I had finished Mass Effect. Getting accurate data on the number of games released each year for the last 20 years is probably impossible. We can, however, pull data from Steam on the number of titles available on the platform for the last 15 years. Now, there are several biases to consider on this chart, which we won't be going through here because I think that despite all of them, this data remains solid enough, coupled with our own personal observations and experience, to pull the following conclusion. There are more games to play in 2023 than there was in 2009, and I mean a lot more. This explains your ever-increasing backlog, and also that there are more and more studios and franchises you follow, and which titles you likely will add to your list of games to play. And it's not only the number of games, it's the amount of content that comes with those games that has been inflated too, through the practice of content-based DLC. While there has been legit complaint over the content of DLCs being often overpriced and bogus content which was just ripped off the base game to generate upsell opportunities, at the end of the day, they will add those couple of extra hours that will further lengthen the time required to complete the entire game. And since, maybe like me, you buy more and more games on sale, long after release, you get to play the complete edition each time, and that can represent an extra 10 to 50 hours, not counting extreme cases like The Witcher 3 Full Edition. Publishers' strategy to push for the release of DLC is particularly strong in open world-based games, another huge time sinker. The open world formula. Another thing has changed in the last 15 years, and that's the increasing number of open world games. I remember in 2011 when Skyrim came out and became a massive success, a truly open world game was a rarity, especially in a single player title, more so in the RPG space. I mean, look at some of the more popular RPG franchises, The Witcher, Dragon Age, or Mass Effect. The idea of the next installment in any of these franchises not being an open world won't even come to mind, although personally I wouldn't be against it if it means a better game. And it's not only RPGs. A typical case is the Assassin's Creed franchise, which started as a map-based game to evolve into fully fledged open worlds, from Black Flag and more so from Origins onwards. All of them started as non-open world games and ended becoming one. Breath of the Wild, Shadow of War, Red Dead 2, Fallout 4, the Far Cry series, the Dying Light series, Cyberpunk 2077, Metro Exodus when compared to the first Metros, Horizon Dawn, Elden Ring, etc. There are just so many these days. Back in 2008 though, open world games were more a thing for MMOs and a select few franchises known for specializing in this format, like games from Bethesda. Of course, these are typically the kind of games in which you will sink a lot of gameplay hours, and the more there are that you want to play, the more time you are going to need to finish one and move on to the next, versus a game with a mere 20-hour campaign and little replayability due to its linear level design. Now, although the availability of open world games has swelled in the last decade, it isn't simply because studios, thanks to better technology and bigger budgets, suddenly decided to cater to a popular genre amongst gamers and give in to their wildest dreams. It actually ties into the evolution of the gaming business as a whole, which also impacts the inflation of gaming hours to consume. I'm speaking about the live service model. The live service model and monetization of time. One of the bases of the live service business model is that there is a correlation between time and money. The more time you spend in a game, or to be more precise, the more time you are engaged in a game, the more likely you are to spend money in it. The idea here is that once a gamer is deeply invested in a game, both time-wise and emotionally-wise, the more likely he is to make an additional purchase over the course of his relationship with the game. In business terms, this is called customer lifetime value, the total amount of profit a business can expect from a customer over the course of their relationship. With the live service model, game studios can maximize their CLV. Now, there are plenty of ways to help increase the CLV, but the ones that interest us are those that will inflate gameplay time, namely, huge open worlds bloated with loot-based content and addictive gameplay loops. A great example is how the Assassin's Creed franchise evolved to include microtransactions in single-player games, the whole model really coalescing in Assassin's Creed Origins, which introduced looting mechanics and the associated RPG stats, with a ton of mostly meaningless content to keep the player playing many more hours than the typical 20 to 30 hours Assassin's Creed campaign. The goal here is to capture the farming MMO type of gamer that will likely spend money to look better or gain XP faster. Odyssey and Valhalla followed suit, making sure to pack the game with time-wasting activities to artificially inflate the duration of the game, in the hope that at one point over the course of a 70, 100 to 100 hours relationship with the gamer, he might end up making at least one in-game purchase. According to an article from the Washington Post, it takes the average player 135 hours to accomplish every task in Assassin's Creed Valhalla, the latest installment from 2020. That makes the game more than 4 times longer than the original Assassin's Creed released in 2007. To increase the amount of time spent in the game, you also need to implement addictive gameplay loops. Now, the core of the loop in the last installment of the franchise was pretty poor and not addictive at all to me, based on getting better and better loot, but with no true excitement to the process. On the other hand, a game like Apex Legends, which to me has a brilliant addictive gameplay loop, worked very well and made me pour hours and hours of game time into it. A game typically designed to increase CLV, in fact, with its whole economy based on that goal, since it's a free-to-play game, which means a gamer with a short lifetime span will be lost forever if he didn't spend anything. These examples make it clear, in my opinion, that the move towards the live service model is one of the bigger factors to which we seem to have less and less time to play all the games we want to, because some of the games we play are designed to make us put as much time into them as possible, milking us before we can move to our next game down the list. Conclusion. If I prefer shorter games today, it's both because I have less time to play while still wanting to play to so many different games, and because the industry has changed drastically in the last decade, doing everything it can to flood you with game time in order to monetize it. But it seems I'm not the only one out there as a gamer with the same feeling. There could be a trend that is starting now to make games shorter, focusing on depth rather than width. According to Dying Light lead dev, a game which famously created backlash for proudly stating the game would require 500 hours to finish. Many players are no longer excited by the idea of an extremely huge open-world game. Could this be the beginning of a change in the gaming landscape, with more and more devs realizing many gamers are tired of massive never-ending games? How about you? I'm curious to know if you agree with me and are one of the guys that is tired of huge games. I just started creating content on this channel, so be sure to leave a comment, as I'll very likely answer it. Also, if you enjoyed the video, please consider subscribing, liking, and turning the notification button on. I'm at the beginning of my journey, and each of those has a huge impact for me. Thanks again, and see you all in the next one.